Okay.
Okay, so we're here live with Dr. Amen, and please tell me how to pronounce your first name.
Nazirahk.
Nazirahk, and that was what I meant to ask you when I walked through the door. Okay, so Jessica is about to bring us in, and please like, subscribe, share, and ask any questions since we have the doctor in the sanctuary. I'm ready. Welcome to the sanctuary. You're listening to DC Radio 96.3, HD4, and DCRadio.gov. I'm Wendy Cherry, your host, and we are talking about one of my favorite topics. It's health and wellness. And so I'm honored to have Dr. Amen in the sanctuary with me today. Dr. Amen is a naturopathic doctor, homeopath, Chinese medicine practitioner, and an organic farmer. You got a lot going on there, Dr. Amen.
Yes.
So for more than 20 years, he has focused on energetic medicine and views the various modalities of homeopathy, herbs, acupuncture, food, and practices such as meditation as tools in helping patients balance energy and restore, obtain, and maintain optimal health, which is what we all need, which is what I know I want.
Right.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the sanctuary.
All right.
So
peace, everyone.
Yeah. So we had a whole conversation before the conversation. So we're just going to double back and talk about some of the things that we want to highlight. And if you have any questions, please type them out in Facebook. So let's just talk about, how do you help people balance energy, restore, obtain, and maintain optimal health? I feel like there's nobody that I know who wouldn't want to know how to do that.
Well, I think we basically teach people how to help themselves through understanding energetics. And when I talk about energetics, today we're here to sort of demystify what energetics is, because it boils down to stuff that's really simple.
Okay.
All right. So, I mean, I guess the first thing that we need to deal with is, what is health, right? So to get to what that means for anyone, we have to ask the basic question of, who am I, right? Which is, am I the body? Am I the mind? Am I, my finances? All these things that we identify with.
Right.
And so in health, we understand that we are spiritual beings coming into this world to have a physical experience.
Okay.
We are sparks of the divine coming to experience its creation. Right. So in that, it's a cyclical process that goes on there, and we each have our unique experience. Right. So we're born into a certain family, into a certain environment, and those things give us exactly what we need to live up to to bring us to our purpose and live out that purpose.
Oh, okay.
So most of the way that we look at disease in the world is that we look at it as something really bad, right?
Yes.
But if we're not living up to, if we don't have that correct definition of who we are, and we're living false definitions, meaning if we buy into the general illusion of our society, which is that material gain gives us happiness.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But the true story is that really we're here to grow as a soul.
Okay.
Then diseases come up for us to wake us up out of that sleep, that dream.
Right. I've experienced that. So I agree.
Instead of us looking at a disease as something that we need to get away from or to suppress, we want to look at our diseases as an opportunity to recognize that our energy is stuck in some way, but this disease that we have is an opportunity. It's a wake-up call. And a lot of times our symptoms are parts of our intuition that are trying to give us a message that we're not listening to.
Right.
So as a doctor, we really want to help people work through whatever they're going through, instead of just getting rid of what they're going through.
Right. So instead of like suppressing it or giving a Band-Aid, some kind of a pill or something, we want to kind of you dig deeper into maybe why. So we know what the diagnosis is. Then do you help them figure out the why?
Right. I mean, so for everyone who comes in, we're people with a disease, or a person with a disease, and with that disease comes our story, comes our experience. And so I use that experience to help people, again, just work through the experience. But we're not the disease. What we end up doing is we say, I am, and then we say we claim stuff. My arthritis, my cancer, my this, my that. No, I have a body, and my body's dealing with that, but that's not me. Do you understand? So that false identification can actually keep us in pain instead of helping us work through pain. And so in the bigger picture, I want to break down how I see things. So, and just Chinese medicine. So if we stick with a basic understanding that, health is our energy is flowing freely, our heart is connected with our mind, which means that we're living our purpose. You understand? And if our energy can flow freely in that process, then we can bring energy into the present moment. We can become human beings, because we live in a world where we're actually being, how can I say this? We're being human doings. We end up, if we give into that material concept, which is based on productivity and efficiency, right? Then we become human doings.
So it's being versus doing.
Right. So we're really human beings. Right. But we have to discover our beingness.
And that's hard.
And that's where practices like meditation, spirituality come in, but they're not, true spirituality is living truth at the crossroad. It's not sitting in a room quiet. It's what we do with what we get from meditation in our interactions on a day-to-day basis. Okay. You understand?
So the being versus doing is something that I'm learning.
Right.
Because I've been told all these years going through school and all these things that I've done is the efforting.
Right.
And I'm learning to shift my mind only in the last few years to learn that just go with the flow. And I do my part and then let the rest unfold.
Well, it's a process. It's kind of like a musician, right? So when you first learn music, you learn, basically how to read music, most of us. Right. And then at some point, when you get proficient enough through your practice, you can get to the point where you can do improv, right? But then in order to do improv, you have to be able to hear music. You have to be able to see music. It's a whole different experience. But you move from effort to effortlessness. And so the goal of life is finding our purpose and moving in that purpose with effortlessness.
Effortlessness.
Right. Okay. So in Chinese medicine, basically, so if health is the free flow of energy, then disease is stuck energy. So that's a basic sort of definition.
Health is a free flow of energy.
Right.
Okay.
Then disease is just stuck energy. So acupuncture, and what I do with acupuncture with the needles is, you have a set of channels that are related to different organs. And anytime there's pain or any kind of suffering, there's a pattern. We look at things through patterns, through syndromes. And in those patterns and syndromes, somewhere down the line is some stuck energy. And so the acupuncture needles basically help release that stuck energy. I can say the same with homeopathy. You can do the same with your diet, with herbs, with supplements. But the goal is really to move stuck energy. To free up your energy where it becomes dynamic again. Okay. And so let's talk about energy. So the idea of chi, or energy, in Chinese medicine, we get our chi from 3 different places. We have our basically what we call our Jing, which is our prenatal chi. And that is the energy that we get from our genetics, from our parents. So if our parents had a long life, lived a relatively healthy lifestyle, then, there's a lot of good chi there. Okay. If our parents had certain tendencies, or maybe we inherited something from our parents, a lot of times people have diseases that they don't work through all the way, and then they end up having children during that disease process. So their weaknesses become our weaknesses, right? So we get both good energy and bad energy as a template from our parents, right? So that's the first set of chi. The second chi that we have is our environmental chi. And what that means is it's you know, the neighborhood we're born into, the food that we take in, you know, the music we listen to, the people we surround ourselves with. These things we can shift and change, but both the inherited chi and the environmental chi are finite. Meaning, if you're not, so the third level of chi is the energy that we get from living our purpose. It happens when the heart and the mind connect.
When the heart and the mind connect. Right.
But the heart and mind doesn't connect until yin and yang come into balance. Right? So when yin and yang come into balance, then we tap into that third source of chi. And that third source of chi is really what we've been talking about, the being. It's the energy that we get from living in the present moment. That's the energy that we can actually, you know, when you think of qigong and all these advanced sort of practices, it's infinite. It's us tapping into the creator within ourselves. So, you know, in Christianity, it would be the concept of living thy will, not my will, right? So it's tapping into something greater than us and bringing that into whatever we do. So that's what I mean by bringing our being into our doing. You understand? Which is really what we're here for.
Right.
So, so how do you bring yin and yang into balance?
So can you just say what is yin?
Yin is the female aspect. So yin and yang are the basics of Chinese medicine.
So you ever see that circle?
Yeah, it's that circle with the black and white in the middle.
With a little dot.
You got a little, in the middle of the white, you have a black dot, and in the middle of the black, you have a white dot.
So which is
the yin is the black.
The black.
It is the unknown. It's the feminine. It's the part that we're all afraid of, right? Because we live in this masculine-dominated world, and we've disempowered the feminine within ourselves, and it's the unknown. It's the dark side.
The dark side.
But it's also part of duality in the sense that, so yang is the masculine side. So we can just say feminine is night, masculine is day. But you can't have day unless you have night. So that makes yin and yang oppositional, but it also makes them interdependent. Do you understand? And they're also mutually consuming, meaning when yin gets longer, which is, you know, at the day gets shorter. At the summer solstice, we have the long days and the nights get shorter, but they balance each other out throughout the season, and the two equinoxes are equal, right? And so our energy flows through that. And then yin and yang are also transformational in that out of winter comes spring, out of spring comes summer, out of summer comes the fall, and out of fall in Chinese medicine comes late fall. And so so you have this interaction, this of yin and yang. So you have qi, and then you have yin yang. And then when you come down to the physical level, how it's broken down is in terms of the 5 elements. Right? So it's how yin and yang basically interact on these 5 elements, and how our chi flows through that while this interaction takes place. So the 5 elements we have in Chinese medicine are wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And in terms of life cycles, they correspond to birth, growth, maturation, death, and rebirth. Right? This is a natural cycle. So when you think of what is the biggest fear in our world right now? What do people suffer from the most? Come on, what part of this whole cycle? It's death.
Death, yeah.
Everybody's afraid of death.
Yeah.
Right? We've even changed our religio-philosophical system to say that when you get to this place, you either go up or down. Right? But that's not how it works in nature.
Right.
After winter comes the spring.
Right.
So if we understood that this is not an end, but something that transforms into something greater, then we lose that basic fear that we have.
Well, I think part of it also is that we are removed from natural cycles.
Well,
and
but
we're trying to.
So I've been giving this lecture to farmers, right? Okay. And it's easy for farmers because they understand, like, you know, the season's over. We have this downtime. We get to plan for the new year, and then we get to like carry it out. Okay. Right. And so if you see that in nature as a natural process, then why doesn't it happen on all levels? In spirituality, we say as above, so below. So these cycles that we're viewing, you know, when we attune ourselves to nature, we lose these fears. Do you understand? Right. Because we watch the leaves drop on the trees. Mm-hmm. Is the tree scared to death? Right. Right? No, it knows that they're going to come back in the spring. Right. And so it's a basic process that when we allow ourselves to be in a moment and observe without prejudice, that we start to lose some of these fears. Okay. So the 5 elements, right? So when we break it down in terms of energetics, we have wood, which in Chinese medicine is related to the organs, the liver, and the gallbladder, right? And the liver and the gallbladder govern the emotion of anger. And that emotion and the flavor associated with the liver and the gallbladder is considered sour. So I want to, so liver qi stagnation. In Chinese medicine, liver qi stagnation is sort of a basic pattern that we have in the industrial world, because what it represents is our liver is our ambition, right? It's our drive. Mm-hmm. So if our drive is sort of out of alignment with reality, then we always desire more than we have the energy to fulfill, right? So our desires are always greater than our capacity. And so that in itself leaves a deficit. So liver qi stagnation is sort of one of the main, you know, anybody in the Western world walking through the door, almost we know like liver qi stagnation. Because that's the programming that we get. That's the programming. We're in a consumer-driven society, which is to always live beyond your means and want more than you have. Never be content with what you got. Always looking for more. Okay. Right? So we all in some way suffer from that. So that makes, and then when our energy gets stagnated, we get frustration, and frustration in the end turns to anger. This is the basic pattern of liver stagnation. So fire is the emotion that is related to the heart and to the small intestine. Okay. And so the emotion is joy, right? All right. And the flavor that goes with that is actually bitter. And so
seems counterintuitive.
Yes.
Okay.
But we'll explain that, and I'm going to get to the flavors later. Okay. And how they really work, but one can ask, like, how can joy injure somebody? Because in Chinese medicine, any of our emotions out of balance can lead to injury, right? Right. So I've known people who have used joy in a very unhealthy way. I'm sure you've told people or been around people where you've told really serious things to, and they laugh at you, right? Right. And we have to look at situations. If you take let's say, you know, black men in Jim Crow South, right? Mm-hmm. What's the biggest stereotype that people have of black people? Everybody has this fear of like the angry black person, angry black man, right? So in situations where you know the consequences of your anger is not going to be healthy, then you develop other ways to express that. Right. So it's really anger, but I'm going to laugh, right? So really, it's almost like your liver, anger, is overacting. So the liver which is the wood, is not supporting, is overacting on the fire element. Do you understand? So
does that
then
have to do with like even people who are drinking a lot? I know that their liver and they're angry.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So liver is related to that. But joy being out of balance is that fire is meaning the wood element is messing with the fire element.
Okay.
And so then it comes out as a disturbance. I laugh, but I really wanted to get angry, is what I'm trying. Do you understand?
Right. Yes.
And so this is how laughter can be unhealthy, because it's not proportional to the situation. Right? And so then we have earth. So we have wood, fire, and now earth. Okay. Earth is related to the spleen and the stomach. Okay. And it's related to the emotion of worry or anxiety.
Right. Which is why when you're worried, you get your stomach.
Right. You feel it in your stomach. Right. All your energy's in your brain because you're thinking about the situation. Right. Right. The situation ain't even happened yet, because anxiety has to do with something that's going to come. It's not even here, but you're trying to like control the situation before it happens.
That used to be me. Yes.
So all your energy is in your mind, which means that nothing's in your stomach. So what's the problem with that? Well, the spleen and the stomach do what? They transform the nutrients from the food that we take into nutrients that your body can actually use. Okay. Right? So if you're worried all the time, it means your digestive process is not going to be very efficient. And so this is at the core of a lot of the like leaky gut syndrome, people having issues where they're actually not absorbing the nutrients from the food, or incomplete digestion. And then in that incomplete digestion, you have like protein complexes that your body then identifies in the negative way, and your immune system is reacting to, and is how you go from having a weak digestion into having all of these food allergies.
Now, can I ask a question? Parental, right?
Yes.
So I'm hearing the science about how you are in your mother's womb, however kind of she was, right, then it affects you. Right.
So let's go back to yin and yang and in relationship to what you're saying. Okay. Because I skipped over that. So when we're in our mother's womb, basically babies are balls of yin energy. You've been living in the water for 9 months, and you're coming out in that soft, tender yin energy. Yeah. Right. So in Chinese medicine, it is through fevers that the yang energy comes into being, right? Because the father can't give you a fever. You understand? Like, but you have to bring your yang energy in. It's not until yin and yang come into balance that you can get to number 3, which is the understanding of your purpose. You understand? Yep. So it's kind of like, it's almost like a sort of childhood fevers in Chinese medicine serve almost the same purpose as like Native American sweat lodges. Do you understand? Yeah. Because in the middle of that, we get the vision. In the middle of that delusion that was a fever came the dream that connects us to our purpose. Right? Yes. And so, but childhood fevers. And then how do we
bring forth the young?
Well, for many of us, me included, it comes through addictions and negative tendencies. We embrace these yang type addictions, right? Okay. And I tell people all the time, our addictions are really us seeking peace. It's us looking for peace through a substance. Okay. And the problem with that is that there's always a cost for whatever the substance. And the more toxic the substance, the greater the cost. Do you understand? Yes. And so, but sometimes if we don't get it, if society doesn't bring us to our purpose, and that's what's wrong with our society. We've lost, a connection to a source in terms of identity. Do you understand? In terms of like the Black community in America is probably the most acculturated group of people in the world, right? Through the process, right? And so, but we've lost the construct. We don't have a tribe and a group. And we also have a philosophy that says that when you come out, you're innately bad. and you want to adapt to the good. That doesn't exist in most other cultures in the world.
Right.
Do you understand?
Right.
They understand that children have a purpose and they have societal rites of passages
and they name them
that bring you to your purpose.
Right. Rites of
Do you understand?
Yes.
And so we're missing out on those rites of passages. There's no like going out into the woods and slaying a lion and coming back and being like, hey, I'm a man now. I'm a part of the tribe.
Right.
You know, we do it through mostly through negative ways, which are addictions. I mean, I'm sure there are many of us who don't have to go down the path of darkness to get to the light.
Right.
But the way that our society is set up, meaning it wants you to follow this consumer-driven, and the drive in consumerism is to look and to confirm your identity from the outside. Do you understand?
Yes.
So you're always looking. You know, and I tell people being cool kills. And so cool because kills. In the end, being cool means we're looking to the outside. To affirm our identity.
Right. Yes.
Right.
That's good for kids too. That's good for anybody.
Right. And so if we understand that, no, we need to affirm our identity from the inside out. You understand?
Yes.
And so that when we you know, when I was dealing with addictions, I thought I had a willpower issue, right? And I thought the answer to my addiction was that if I could just sit in front of a drink and have a superficial conversation with a young lady, that I would be normal. And then I realized later on, I wasn't really made for superficial conversations. And so it was set up to lose to begin with that challenge to myself. Yeah. You understand?
Yes.
And if I really looked at my true nature, then I understand like I'm here for a deeper purpose than that. And I stick to that.
But how do you get there, though, Doctor? I mean, you sitting here, you wisdom path, and you got the nice, like, gray, like, wisdom hair, and you know. But how does a regular person
living life? It comes through living life, and again, we'll get to sort of understanding energetics because, there was a lot of pain and suffering in that. You know, you asked about history, so how did I get to natural medicine? You know, I worked as a EMT intermediate for the city of New Orleans from 1987 to 91 while I did my undergrad at Xavier University. So and at the same time I was dealing with all these crazy addictions, living in New Orleans, which is like a party town. Right. Absolutely. So it allowed me to, what I got from that was I was working in this medical world where I got to see that it was, you know, even though a lot of the practitioners meant well, that in the larger scope of things, like it was a lot of it was money driven, and how we treated people had a component to it that had nothing to do with helping people get better. Correct. And a lot to do with money. Yeah. And that was both. So from the trauma perspective, you know, this was back in the days of crack cocaine when the city was spinning out of control and the murder rate was right up there with the DC murder. Right. So I'm going to work and it's all this excitement and I'm like saving lives and doing all this stuff, which really was rewarding. And at the same time, when I was off work, I was in the scene that was contributing to that same suffering. So I call that the period where I was like chasing myself. Right. You understand the wounded healer. You're trying to heal somebody, but really you're contributing to the suffering. Yes. And on the medical end of that was, you know, we were going in and like sickle cell crisis or asthma attacks. Every time the weather changed, we almost could know like who was going to call. And you go in their house and, you know, there's a big glass of milk or some like glow in the dark looking cookies. And you're like saying, you know, after you understand, you know, like, I wonder, you know, it feels great when you give them that treatment that allows them to breathe again, or you give the drugs that allow them to like get out of pain. But at what point do we say, hey man, you think them cookies you're eating have anything to do with the fact that you're having an asthma attack every time the weather changes? Right. So we never empower people. Right. And we always play this sort of, you know, hero and damsel in distress kind of thing. Okay. which is what Western medicine does, and the role of doctors. Like, I'm the hero. Who are you to question the hero? You're the damsel in distress. You need my help.
Right.
And so we play this game.
And we play it well. Like Black and brown people, we play it well because we're taught to give our power, that what they say is it.
But everybody does. I think it's a human instinct to give away your sort of power like that. But yes, ignorance makes it
goes
worse.
So fast. Okay.
So we talked about earth and metal. So metal is next, and metal is related to the lung and the large intestine, and it deals with the emotion of sadness. And the taste and the flavor associated with metal is spicy or acrid, right?
Okay.
And then there's water. So water has to do with the kidney and urinary bladder, and it's associated with the energy of fear. And the flavor is salt, right? So how does this work in practice?
Right.
When I'll use, a basic sort of, when people come in and they have an illness, so if it's liver stagnation, they need sour. They need, things that really astringe and contain them. If they're dealing with a spleen deficiency, sweet is the flavor, but it's not the sweet that we know.
Right.
We're just talking about introducing people to unprocessed food, so whole grains.
Right.
Those things are sweet by nature in terms of food, right? If someone comes in and the idea of when you have a lung infection, what do you want to do? You want to get that out.
Yeah.
It's your body trying to get something out. So spicy makes stuff, you eat that hot stuff, it's going to open you up, right? So spicy opens you up to the outside. So you get it off. And then salt, and what salt does for us is salt actually dissolves stuff.
Okay.
So when you have like tumors, one of the big things for like any kind of tumor is eating a whole bunch of seaweed, because those things sort of dissolve tumors. So fibroids and things like that.
Okay.
I've
never heard
salt
that.
is a flavor that will help to get rid of that.
Okay.
And so bitter, which is the energy of the heart, helps things to descend, and they help things to clear. So people look at like when we look at food, like people like, habaneros and really hot peppers, but if you're an angry person, I know angry people who, when they get angry or they're trying to get angry, they go out and eat spicy food so it can make them angry. So it's kind of like throwing fire on fire, right? But if and we tell people in our practice that cayenne pepper is really the only pepper that has a cooling effect.
Okay.
When you eat jalapenos and habaneros and all them peppers that burn going in and burn coming out, then that's heat, right? So you're adding heat to the system. And so if you look at Africa and India, and you're like, well, how do these people, they eat all them hot peppers? One of the first things when you get a syndrome or hypertension. So hypertension is mostly liver heat. You understand? Too much heat in the liver channel.
Okay.
So we can say it's anger uncontrolled or anger suppressed. It has to go somewhere. If you don't work through it, then it has to go somewhere.
Okay.
So then you get that liver heat. So why can Africans and Indians eat all that spicy food and not have issues with hypertension? It's because they know the flavor of bitter, right? So they balance out all that spiciness with bitterness. Our taste buds are damaged because they put this artificial sweet in our food, and so we don't like bitter. Bitter is like, no way. Sour, no way. Right? Can the taste buds regenerate? So if taste buds do regenerate. Okay. So people just have to get away from the all of this artificial stuff for a little while. That's why we tell people, like, we do a detox diet, and we tell people, please try this for 3 weeks, because 3 weeks is long enough for you to get away from all those things And it's almost like you hit the reset button on your body. So when you go back after 3 weeks and you try to eat something that's bad for you, at that point, your body usually can let you know, like, nope.
Right. So now, do you have like main things that you tell everybody to detox from, or do you?
No. So we look at your disease and the disease pattern, right? So, and we put it in terms of the 5 elements.
Okay.
So, okay. You know, you have fibroids, right? And so there's 2 ways that you can have fibroids. Fibroids can be from blood stagnation, and blood stagnation can come from too much heat, or it can come from phlegm stagnation. So that's where, you know, when you take an approach to treating fibroids, like, oh, let's all just eat a raw foods diet, that'll like heal our fibroids. Well, if you have fibroids that are actually coming from phlegm and dampness, and you eat raw foods are cold and damp. So if you're adding cold and damp on top of a cold, damp stagnation, then it's only going to create more blood stagnation. So the raw foods end up making your fibroids grow instead of heal. And so that's why you want to understand the energetics of the situation. And there is no one. If someone is in an excessive state of liver heat and you give them raw foods, then their fibroids are going to get better. You understand? So, but that's excess. Most people are coming from deficiency. So, so we have to understand the dynamics. And this is where when you teach people energetics, they can take that, and it's very basic because it boils down to like foods. Yeah. You understand? And I look at herbs in the same way. So you can do herbs in the same way. Okay, I have a cough. Is the cough clear? Because that's a whole different set of herbs than if you have a cough and you're coughing up yellow stuff. If it's clear, it's cold. If it's yellow, it's heat. So we're looking at yin and yang and how the chi is flowing. And we're looking at how environmental factors like heat, cold, dampness, summer heat, how all of these environmental influences are affecting those 5 elements. Okay. Do you understand? Yeah. Yeah. And so if there's too much phlegm, then how does that affect the spleen, or how does the spleen contribute to the phlegm? And if the spleen is weak, which is contributing to the phlegm stagnation, then how does that affect the liver and the flow of blood? So then you start thinking in terms of systems instead of like, I got this rash and I just need to put this prednisone cream on there and it's gonna go away. Right. You know? Right. So if you got the rash, you know, from a natural medicine perspective, it's your skin. Your skin speaks for your lungs, and your lungs are connected to your colon. You understand? Lungs and large intestine. So if you don't poop it out or breathe it out, then it's going to come out through your skin. Okay. But that's still a healthy way to express a disease versus that same disease being somewhere on your internal organ. So, you know, you have children and they go through treatment, and then if you put all these creams on them that suppress them, later on they can develop something like eczema. Yeah, I mean asthma. So it goes from the skin into the lungs. Wow. So that's a reverse situation. So you want to vent stuff out instead of having it go in. Right. Wow. So that's a lot. It's a lot. And we could have, you know, I'm giving you a basic overview. Yeah. Of how we think in terms of energetics and what we do in terms of like helping people, just so you don't have to know the whole system. You just have to know how the system applies to you. Right. And I can take those same energetics and break them down from a Chinese medicine perspective, from an Ayurvedic perspective. You know, when somebody sits in front of me, I don't see 5 different people. At the end of our interview, I can give you well, most people come with a Western medicine diagnosis, but I can at least think of a Western diagnosis. I can come up with a Chinese medicine diagnosis. I can come up with a homeopathic remedy and an Ayurvedic diagnosis. So there's not 5 different people. It's just different tools or different that you're viewing something, different lenses that you're viewing something from. Question. If we're African descent, why are we connecting with Chinese medicine? I'm just asking. Because, so I can say that because there's no African system. If you get into some traditional African cultures, I'm sure if you got into tribal medicine somewhere, it's the same basic dynamics.
Okay, I know that.
Because the Chinese medicine system is something that has been continuous. It hasn't been broken. And I can even say about Chinese medicine that when, the Tao is eternal.
Okay.
Right? It is bringing, these dynamics are us looking at the fact that there's a part of us that is eternal. So that's the whole idea of us bringing our spirit into matter, right? And the Tao is eternal, the external part's changing. So it's the idea of yin and yang. Those are the laws of nature. Yin and yang and the 5 elements, those are the laws of nature. That's how nature works no matter where you go. Right. Now, in Chinese medicine, the people who taught me Chinese medicine, they're looking at it like, my grandfather's 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 grandfather did this, and I'm this long lineage. And that's all good and dandy in traditional China, but how does that stuff work over here?
In DC, right.
Right. How does it work? And that's in terms of, Chinese medicine is driving the extinction of rhinos, the extinction of bears, the extension of all these kinds of animals, because somewhere in Chinese medicine, somebody say a rhino horn is going to give you some special powers.
Gotcha. Okay.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
That's completely out of balance with nature. Gotcha. So you have to look at the unmovable and take this other stuff, which it's just like religion, right? You have spirituality and then you have religion.
Right.
And so Chinese medicine, there's a lot of religion. And we need to let go of that and apply the principles to the here and now. So ultimately, we stop using Chinese herbs, but we stop using Chinese herbs when we understand how Western herbs work in the same way. Do you understand? So this herb is sweet in flavor, and this will counter this. You understand? This herb is bitter, and it's going to counter this. So we start thinking with the philosophy, but we apply it to the conditions that we're living in.
And that's what I was going to ask, because I had an herbalist here.
Right.
And she talked about the stuff that's native to you.
Right. Ultimately, that's what you want to use. Unfortunately, it's not always as convenient as that. It's more convenient for me to sit in my office in Tacoma Park and order stuff from China.
Right.
I'll be honest.
Right.
Than for me to try to do everything myself.
But that makes sense, though, that is like a true thing.
Right.
We're not talking about whether it's easy or not. We're talking about the native things that you are now in your environment could be better.
Right.
In some instances.
Well, could be. I think once you understand it's more sustainable. Because once you understand the energetics, you want to develop a system that works in your environment.
Yes.
In order for it to be sustainable, you have to get it to work in your environment.
Right. So now we talked a little bit before we started about how women, especially women of African descent, are sort of like in this cycle. And I know a lot of my listeners and people that I focus on are those women. Right. And you had a good perspective.
Well, we live in if we look at the world, the bigger karma, right? In the bigger situation that we're living in, the masculine we've all, this Western productivity and efficiency schedule that we're on, where time, which is something that's really artificial, we've made it really real. And then we put this idea of your work efficiency, right? So the program I was telling, and so that leads to this masculine imbalance where we praise the masculine and we look at that as valuable, and then we denigrate the feminine. Okay. Right. So how does that work in the average household? And I was telling you, when I was growing up, my mom she had a different standard for my brothers or for her boys than what she had for the girls. But the programming was basically you need to look cute and look nice so you can get a man. Oh, God. But you need to be careful because you can't really trust men. So you also need to get your education so you never need a man. Right. Yeah. And so the general trend of society has us this get your education, which is really you're developing a masculine aspect of your being through the way that we educate ourselves, right? So instead of embracing your femininity you embrace masculinity. And then so you go out, you get a job. Your job is like, you get your promotion if you can be productive and efficient. You go up the chain and you help us grow as a company. And so let's say that takes you from your 22 up until you're 35. And the whole time you've been putting off your childbearing instincts because you need to keep up with what's going on at work. If I take 9 months off or whatever to have this baby, then I come back, I might never get that raise or even have a job, right? So we put that off. But in the meantime, with this masculine urge that we have, we're throwing off all of our feminine hormones, right? Because we are embracing masculine energy. And so if we have to look at, you know, so when women come to me and they are trying to get pregnant, I do a lot of like fertility work. Then we have to look at like come to terms with like how much damage this cycle has had. If you've embraced masculinity, then you're embracing testosterone at the expense of your estrogen and your progesterone. So how do we bring those up and bring this down so that you could actually embrace femininity and get pregnant, right? And so, or even not have a hellacious menopause. Let's just go there, which is really still another imbalance of yin and yang, right? And so this is, all these things need to be taken into account and they need to be balanced. And I do it on an individual level, right? We all have a different story and our constitution is different. So I keep it to an individual level, which brings us now to the DNA testing. So one component that I wanted to talk about was that I'm sort of new to is DNA testing in my practice. And so you, I'm sure, are familiar with the whole Human Genome Project, and I know you have a link to the sister who does the African ancestry. So in the healthcare world, what this has done is sort of revolutionized a, you know, when I talked in the beginning about the inherited chi, so it gives us insight into our inherited chi. And when I said we have both good and bad, the DNA testing can reveal to us the good, and it can also reveal to us the bad. And so through that testing, we can come up with really personalized regimens. You know, a lot of people go out and we read. So reading is like this Western mind, and we, you know, like somebody gets a cancer diagnosis and then they go out and they like start Googling cancer and they come up with like 20 different supplements that they're going to take for their cancer, right? It all sounds good. It sounds like it's all going to work. And then you look and you're about to eat your dinner, and, you know, you got to take, you don't even have an appetite to eat the food. Right? And so in the end, you don't have the appetite to eat the food, but what it means is you put out your digestive fire. So that now it doesn't matter if you're eating whole foods, organic. If you don't have a digestive fire, even that is going to turn into some toxin in your gut. Do you understand? So by doing this sort of genetic testing, it allows you, it gives you insight into a number of different factors that really sort of control your health. And it can pinpoint deficiencies that you might have that no one else has that might now contribute to a disease or contribute to a disease in the future.
So it's a blood test.
No, it's a saliva test, just like the saliva test that you do. And so it can give you insight into your lipid metabolism, your bone health, like oxidative stress, your insulin sensitivity, how you might respond to certain foods. It gives you insight if you're a woman or a male into how you might be processing different estrogens in your system. And so in the end, instead of taking the 20 supplements, if you do this kind of testing, maybe you only have to take 2.
So is it cost prohibitive to normal people, you know, people like what do you think is the investment? There's always an investment when you're talking about health. Like this
testing is only, I'd say for the patient it's somewhere between $300 and $400. It depends. It can go up depending on, I mean, there's a lot of this nutritional testing that people do now that goes into thousands and thousands of dollars.
Okay.
So this is simple. It's not invasive, and it can give you. And the other thing that to be concerned about with all the DNA testing is like, are they going to put me into the system?
Yeah,
like, are they going to like
steal my
tag me?
stuff?
Right. And the answer, at least with this company that we've been working with, is no. They're actually they have said that they will not contribute to that sort of general gene pool, and your stuff stays secret. Even though most times we just encourage people to like put a false name on.
Well, yeah. African Ancestry does the same thing. They don't do that. Okay. So have you taken the test for yourself? You said you were new to it.
Well,
so
and I was
about yourself.
I did. So I was having some health issues, and I'm
as a doctor.
Yeah. I mean, we're in these bodies. And again, our disease is a wake-up call.
Yes.
And so for me, I mean, I've been on a plant-based diet for 30 years.
Okay.
And so it was a surprise when I started having joint pain, right? And I did all the things that people do to, like, I was taking curcumin, I was taking a bunch of flax oil. So when I did the genetic testing, what it showed for me was that I didn't have the enzyme to convert flax oil into the omega-3s and the DHAs that I actually needed. Right. And so I started taking a DHA from algae, which is like the vegan DHA that's out there, and it actually helped with the pain. So that's one example where I could have taken, a bottle of flax oil every day, and it would have done nothing for me. Right.
Because you hear these things. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, there's insight that you can gain. And there's a lot, again, it's the overtaking of stuff. A lot of stuff we don't need.
Right. Or you eat it for a little while, and then you get back to balance, and then you don't need it anymore.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So I had that same sort of like, I'm thinking of marketing is all about vegan and raw and whatever, right? So here I go, I'm raw. And I'm thinking I'm doing something, right? I'm at the restaurant, like, I'll only eat this, whatever. Turn around, I'm more vata.
Yeah.
So I'm not supposed to have raw.
Right, exactly.
And then off and on for different reasons, right? But I became more strict with it because of listening. So, getting my certification at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, they teach you to try everything for yourself to see what it feels like in your body, because you can't. It's bio-individuality. So I go and I am, fasting since May till recently. And I realized, though my weight is the same, like I weigh the same exact that I've always weighed, I am 7% higher in fat. Right. Because my body was starving.
So it backfired on you.
It backfired.
So that genetic testing can also give you insight into like diet from the perspective of like, is it a carbohydrate metabolism issue? Is it a lipid metabolism issue?
Right.
And in those cases, it could still be a plant-based diet.
Okay.
But the emphasis will be different in terms of the foods that you eat.
Right. So that can help.
Yes.
I'm coming to get that test.
Well, you can get the test, but I could also look at your tongue and pulse and tell you a lot of the same. So.
Okay. Well, I'm coming for that too.
All right.
So we have 5 minutes. Because it goes so fast. Great conversation. What can we tell, people who are just learning this? Like, so Dr. Amen is tell them where you're.
So I'm, our clinic is the Wisdom Path Healing Center. And again, I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner, which means I do Chinese herbs and I do acupuncture. And I'm also a homeopath. So we didn't really talk about homeopathy, but homeopathy is really its own sort of medicine. So that we can save for a different, but it's energetic medicine. So really we're treating patterns, right? And so when people come to see me, we really try to address things from the bigger picture. You understand? Like if you have a disease and, we can talk all the, like we really need to get down to the basics of what it means to get you over your symptoms, but to work through the issues.
Yes.
If you're having gut issues, but you're ignoring your intuition, and I just like get rid of your gut issues without you like understanding what the message was, or the next time the symptoms come up, for you to be able to see like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be in that place. Maybe I shouldn't be in that relationship. Maybe I shouldn't be in that job. Maybe then you're trying to get me to help you. And those relationships turn into like codependent relationships, right? Because you're not healing. You didn't get empowered from your disease.
Right.
You understand? So real health comes when people come in and I can help them work through their issues. And sometimes, yes, you have to do the Western medical procedures. You know, if you got a really intense cancer, the best thing might probably be to take it out and then cut your losses and still change your lifestyle and do all the healthy things. But if you try to just address it with just natural medicine, you might have to drop the body. And, you know, from the perspective of rebirth, that's not a bad thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. Do you understand? Okay. So we try to help people in whatever way we can to use both Western medicine and, you know, I help people try like, don't be afraid of Western medicine. Educate yourself. Right. And that way you know what this stuff is and you can use it appropriately, but you don't use it to suppress. You use it to actually help you grow. Right. You understand? And that's the difference. You know, in Chinese medicine, they say no medicine or substance is really bad for you. Or it can be both good and bad for you depending on the quantity. Do you understand? Yeah. Something in a small amount might be healing, whereas if you take too much of it, it can kill you. Right. And so, and that's for everything. Poison is still poison. Right. Okay. So there's the balance. So I'm at Wisdom Path Healing Center. Yes. And that's Tacoma Park, Maryland. And so my website is wisdompath.net. And then our phone number is 301-891-2488. That's 301-891-2488. And, you know, I'm also a farmer, but, you know, and that's linking the food and to our health. Yeah. If we're not in balance with the food, you know, I encourage people to either grow their food or know their farmer, but to realize the basic healing properties of food and how to be connected with the source of that food is a healing experience. And so for me, to have the experience of being able on a personal level to grow all the food that my family needs has been a beautiful thing. That's amazing. And so, but I encourage people to have some kind of connection with their food source. Know where your food is coming from, because food right now is one of the biggest poisons it's the biggest, one of the biggest environmental effects. So if you change that, you can get away from a lot of drugs, and you know, you can really take control of a big part of your health if you just can sort of control the food that you put in. And so instead of like complaining about your insurance plan, you should invest in the diet plan that works for you. Ah, I like that. I'm gonna post that as a quotable from Dr. Amen. Well, thank you so much. All right, thank you for having me. There's so much to talk about, so I'm gonna have to have you back at some point. I can come back. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you, and we will see you again next time in the sanctuary. Peace.